Somewhere in Greece, around 1200 BCE, scribes were etching signs into clay tablets. These signs, what we now call Linear B, formed a sophisticated writing system used to manage the stores of the Mycenaean palaces, to record offerings to the gods, to tally war chariots and jars of olive oil. These men could read, these men could write. And then, in the span of just a few decades, everything collapsed. The Mycenaean world vanished, the palaces burned, the trade routes closed, and with them, writing disappeared too, as if the knowledge of the signs were so tightly bound to the social order that had produced it that it could not survive that order's fall. For nearly 4 centuries, Greece passed through what we call the Dark Ages, a stretch of time without texts, without archives, without written memory. Knowledge became oral again. Stories began once more to travel from mouth to ear, carried by bards who sang entire epics from memory. It was against this backdrop that something remarkable happened. Homer, or rather, the tradition that gave rise to Homer. Thousands of lines, stories of extraordinary richness, handed down without a single written line. Oral memory, when it is the only technology available, takes on a power the literate mind can scarcely conceive. The Greek bards did not memorize word for word. They composed in real time out of formulas, rhythmic structures, narrative building blocks that they assembled the way jazz musicians improvise over familiar scales. Oral thought is living thought, bodily, rooted in performance and in relationship. And then the Phoenician alphabet arrived. The Greeks adapted it. They added vowels, a decisive innovation, and by the 8th century BCE, a new age of writing had begun. But this time, something was different. This was no longer the writing of scribes in the service of the palace. It was writing that was accessible, light, able to circulate, and with it, Greek thought set off on a trajectory the world had never seen before. Contemporary neuroscience has begun to map what learning to read does to the human brain, and the findings are startling. When a child learns to read, the brain recruits regions that existed long before writing, areas dedicated to recognizing shapes, to seeing objects, to discriminating sounds, and rewires them together in an entirely new configuration. The neuroscientist Stanislas Dehaene calls this neuronal recycling. Writing colonizes circuits that never evolved for it and transforms them. The process runs deep. It reshapes how the brain handles language, memory, logical reasoning, and even visual perception. Oral cultures think in concrete situations. When researchers posed abstract syllogisms to non-literate populations, of the kind, all bears in cold countries are white. Novaya Zemlya is a cold country. What color are the bears there? Many answered that they did not know, because they had never been to Novaya Zemlya and had never seen the bears there. Formal logic, cut loose from lived experience, struck them as not merely difficult but almost absurd. Written thought, by contrast, trains the mind to handle abstractions, to reason about things one has never lived through, to build arguments that hold by their internal structure rather than by their anchoring in the sensory world. And this is where the question turns vertiginous. Because if literacy changes the very structure of thought, and everything suggests that it does, then it also changes the way the world appears. The literate mind carves up reality differently. It categorizes, it ranks, it hunts for stable definitions, for essences, for general laws. It tends to spatialize time, to picture the past behind us, the future ahead, the present as a point on a line. These intuitions feel natural, obvious, universal, and yet they are largely artifacts of a particular cognitive technology. It may be that Greek philosophy itself, Plato and his ideal forms, Aristotle and his logic, Euclid and his geometry, could never have emerged without alphabetic writing. The idea of an immutable truth, abstract, independent of particular circumstances, is an idea that needs a stable medium in order to take hold. The spoken word is fleeting. The written word stays. And what stays can be reread, criticized, measured against itself. Writing opens a distance between thought and its author. It externalizes thought, makes it visible, makes it something one can handle. And perhaps it is in that gap that philosophy was born. But here's the most unsettling hypothesis. In gaining this capacity to abstract, to formalize, to reason with its feet off the ground, the mind may also have given something up. The oral mind lives in an enchanted world, a world where everything is relation, where things speak to one another, where knowledge is always embodied in a voice, a body, a context. The literate mind has gained an extraordinary kind of power, science, philosophy, law, literature, but it has also learned to see the world as a collection of separate objects, measurable, defined, the self on one side, the world on the other. And this separation, however productive, may also lie at the root of a certain modern sense of disenchantment. What writing did to the human mind, at bottom, was give it a mirror, the ability to watch itself think, to reread one's own ideas as though they came from someone else, to correct oneself, contradict oneself, build on what has been thought before. But a mirror shows a reversed image, and sometimes from staring too long into the mirror, one forgets that one had been looking through a window. The Mycenaean Greeks counted their jars of oil. The bards sang the rage of Achilles without ever writing a word. The philosophers of Athens sought eternity in abstract forms, and each of these minds inhabited a real, living world, yet one carved along invisible lines drawn by the technology of its own thought. Today, characters multiply across our screens. Reading is changing again. The image returns, the oral returns in new forms. And perhaps the human mind is rewiring itself once more, feeling for a balance between abstraction and presence, between the sign and the thing, between what can be written and what can only be lived. The alphabet opened a window onto the infinite, but a window also has a pane of glass. And the glass we eventually forget, until the moment we reach out and touch something cold, hard, transparent, something that separates.